Good morning, Metalheads Unit. Welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown. And today we're looking at the latest album from After the Burial entitled Evergreen. Oh, I'm not gonna lie, I've not been looking forward to this, but so many people apparently want to hear my thoughts on After the Burial and their new album, because apparently there are so many people who still give a fuck about this band at this point. I have no idea why. I've never been a huge fan of this whole gent subgenre, but the one band I've simply never understood at all was After the Burial. Like, I could understand where people were coming from in regards to Periphery. In fact, I think their most recent album is actually a legitimately good record. I can get down with some Born of Osiris and shit like that. You know, other bands like Architects and Tesseract, there's a lot of good stuff going on in that sound. But After the Burial, man, I don't get it. They're just so boring. They bring absolutely nothing new to the table. They're so boring. Like, not once in the past 13 years has After the Burial delivered anything to me that has ever engaged me on any level whatsoever. I don't even dislike these records. I just think they're so fucking plain and boring. And spoiler alert, that's how I feel about Evergreen, man. And I tried really fucking hard. I gave this album as many chances as I could muster. But eventually I gave up. I just couldn't do it. The entire album is so predictable. From the flow to the songwriting to the performances, there's nothing on this record that's surprising or shocking or unique or new or interesting. It does noticeably feel more mature than some of the previous records, I'll give it that. But I think that just has to do more with the fact that the band is obviously inherently older now than when we last heard from them. Like, I don't think it's because of a conscious effort in the songwriting. I think it's literally just because they're older and by default more mature. Which, I guess to be entirely fair, is better than like Black Veil Bride syndrome, where these guys just vehemently refuse to fucking grow up and move on. So, fuck it, I'll take that, I guess. And it's weird, too, because in this case, it doesn't really have anything to do with the individual songs. In fact, if we're just looking at, like, the musicianship and the structure, this is probably their best arranged record in a while. Like, it's got a solid foundation. All the elements are there. They don't sound emotionless or empty. They don't sound like they're being forced to be here. But they just refuse to do anything that interesting, For a band that's supposed to be a prog metal band, they refuse to progress to anything. And every single song follows the exact same setup, even if you do, by some wild chance, absolutely, without a doubt, love any one track on this album. I really have trouble thinking that you could still sit through this entire album, because there's not a single shred of variety and spice to be found on here. Like, man, I tried. Believe me, I did. I really tried to get into this album. And to be fair, did come bloody close on some of the more aggressive numbers on the record. Take, for instance, Exit Exist, which seems to take probably the most influence from new wave of American heavy metal, with more aggressive Swedish-style riffs and American metalcore influences, and a pretty flashy breakdown that fuses in well with the rest of it. Final track of Pulse Exchange rechannels a lot of that aggressive energy as well. Not quite as enthusiastic, mind you, but it was enough for me, I guess. But man, those moments really are the closest thing to variety on this record. The entire thing is kill switch guitars and breakdowns and loud, abrasive, throaty vocals, and I'm so fucking bored, man! They all sound the same, they talk about the same things, they all bleed together as a result. I would personally have trouble differentiating any of these songs from one another if I were to put this on shuffle right fucking now, and I'd be willing to bet that any fucking casual heavy metal listener would be having that same fucking problem. Like, this album is so boring, I'm even struggling to come up with things to talk about at this point. I've only been recording for a little bit, and I honestly feel like I've said all that there is to say about this album. This may just be yet another case where I am in the fucking minority, because this band has existed for a long time, and they certainly don't need my approval. Hell, to give you some context, I actually just looked at another review from Exclaim.ca. They're specifically talking about the opening track, Behold the Crown here, saying that it's a mashup of everything that has always made After the Burial great, mind-bending technicality that manages to loop back around to be catchy again. And I can't help but sit here and wonder, did we listen to different records? Because there's nothing on here that I would find really that technically proficient, even within the normal standards of metalcore, let alone progressive metal and gent and progressive metalcore. Like, are we listening to two different albums? Because I don't hear what you're hearing at all. And if that is truly the case, then so be it. But since we're already here, let me just reiterate again, this thing is so fucking boring. 1.5 out of 5. Like, I don't even really want to give it a score this low because there really isn't that much truly terrible about it. In many ways, it reminds me a lot of that recent Grand Magus record where, yeah, it's not incompetently performed or anything. It just has absolutely nothing to say, nothing new to offer. It's happy to recycle riffs and recycle patterns and just repeat itself all fucking day long. And I am done, man. And I think it's even worse in the case of After the Burial when you see so many of their peers moving on and doing much more interesting things. These last couple of years, a lot of old metalcore, deathcore, and progressive metalcore bands from the late 2000s have moved on to new sounds and new ideas, and the ones that have stuck around, like Periphery, have really upped their fucking songwriting. They've split from Sumerian, for fuck's sakes, in the case of Periphery. But in comes After the Burial, happy to do their own shtick. I guess to their credit, they're at least consistent. I mean, I don't really see this being a ball breaker for you if you are a longtime fan of After the Burial. But at this point, from a band that's been around this long and is considered to be so progressive and so influential, I would personally expect something a little bit more flavorful, a little bit more well thought out, a little bit more interesting and original. And that is definitely not what I got on this record. 1.5 out of 5. This is a bad record. It is a fucking boring record. And I really fucking hope this is the last time I have to hear from After the Burial. Granted, even if it isn't, I will probably forget this by the time this video even goes online because it really is that forgettable, but nonetheless. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? Thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately, and you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.